Welcome to our episode 3, season 1 of our Caregiving Club Newscast. I'm your host, Sherri Snelling. I'm also a gerontologist, author, and CEO of Caregiving Club. And we have so much to bring to you in March in this first of our 2 newscasts that we'll be doing. So I want to share with you some caregiver wellness news. There has been some really interesting reports about the sandwich generation and Gen Z putting off maybe having children because they are already caring for older parents. So we're going to dive into some of those surveys. Also, a really great Wall Street Journal articles that the headline really caught me, and it was Caregivers Can't Fix Everything. Boy, isn't that the truth? So we're going to share some really wonderful nuggets from that article just in case you missed it. There's also a new club that has kind of come to be in actually in the UK, and it's a Caregiver Anti-Burnout Club. We're going to tell you what that's all about. It's actually a really interesting idea that hopefully will move across the pond and come here to the US. And then finally, in Caregiver Wellness News, we're going to talk a little bit about melatonin, because we have the first day of spring coming up and daylight savings, and we're trying to obviously maybe through winter get outside, get a little bit more sunshine, and have our circadian rhythms all set for good sleep health. But one of the disturbing things that I've come across now in several studies is that we are suffering as a society from melatonin overdose. So we're going to tell you what that is, how to avoid it, and why maybe that's happening. Then we're going to move into our Well Home Design news. And National Sleep Awareness Week is March 8th through the 14th. So I'm going to share with you some sleep science hacks around what foods help us sleep, the 5 senses of sleep, and some other things. So those will be really interesting. Also going to talk about this new trend in luxury longevity apartments that are being intentionally designed with all these longevity amenities built into it. We know things tend to maybe start on the higher end, but they're going to move down into affordability for middle class and also for the more affordable housing. So that'll be interesting. And then I came across a new app. And for those of you who know, I on the caregivingclub.com website, I write a blog called The Snug Home. It's also the name of my 3rd book that I'm working on. And I came across this app, so I had to share it with you. It is called the Snug Safety app. How perfect is that? And then moving into the caregiving in the workplace, 2 actual surveys have come out just last month. One's from care.com and talks a lot about the sandwich generation challenges and what they're looking for in terms of support for their employer. And then the second one was from Pew Research, and that one was more broad. It was on aging in America, but there were a lot of questions about caregiving. And again, some of the wants and desires and expectations that caregivers in the workplace have of both their employer support and also government support. So we're going to share with you those survey results. And then we move into our 4th pop culture segment, which many of you have emailed me and said, we really love this. I know it's, sometimes it seems a little frivolous, but it's definitely a conversation starter when we think about all the things that we're facing in caregiving. So for this pop culture segment, we're going to focus on Alzheimer's at the Oscars and also on a new hit TV show that I'm really enjoying. So we're going to share that with you. And we're also going to talk about, they say that celebrities pass in 3s. Well, unfortunately, we've had 4 celebrities who have passed away really within the last month. And they were all too young to go. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to talk a little bit about why that makes it so important for us to really understand both our physical and mental health. So maybe we can, avoid some of these issues or get treated more quickly because we know what the red flags are, whatever. So we're going to share those stories with you. So with that, I just want to say, don't forget to subscribe to this newscast on our Caregiving Club YouTube channel. You can hit the like button or hopefully hit the subscribe button, and then you'll get a notification every time we have a new newscast come out every couple of weeks. So we hope that we can look forward to some new subscribers. We're just really enjoying building up our subscription base on YouTube, and we really appreciate all of you who are tuning in for these newscasts, podcasts, self-care videos that we do, educational webinars. There's all kinds of content on our YouTube channel that you can find. So again, we really appreciate having you. Now, let's go ahead and dive right into our caregiver wellness news. To kick off our caregiver wellness news, I wanted to share with you an article that I came across. It was in the Wall Street Journal, and it really hit me because the headline was Caregivers Can't Fix Everything. How true is that? We try, and we struggle, and we're challenged with that juggling act of balancing all those balls. But unfortunately, we can't control everything. And certainly, I've talked in my workshops. I've done articles on the fact that this lack of control is what often leads to a lot of our emotional wellness issues with anxiety or depression and sadness and other things. And so we have to find other things we can control to bring that balance back, because we do lose control when it comes to caregiving. We can't control cancer or Alzheimer's or mental health issues or anything else, but we can find other ways to bring the balance back, that control back in our lives in other aspects. But going back to this article in the Wall Street Journal, I thought it was a really beautiful article. We'll have a link on our newscast page on the caregivingclub.com site. But, it said, of course, as we know, caregiving is unpredictable. It can start in a crisis, and it doesn't just start in a crisis. You could be going along the caregiving journey, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's another crisis bomb. And then, boom, there's another crisis bomb. I call them life hacks. Life quakes. Sorry, not life hacks. That's the good thing. Those are the solutions. The life quakes are the things that shake up our lives, disrupt everything. Sometimes they can be really devastating, or sometimes, as those of us in California know who live with earthquakes all the time, you get a little shake, but you just move on. You kind of forget about it, and you become a little bit used to it as you go through that journey. But so here are some things that came out of the article. One caregiver said that she goes on what she calls rage runs, and she goes with a fellow runner and who's also caregiving for an older parent. And during the run, they kind of sweat it out. They talk afterwards, about their frustrations, about their anger. This is a great outlet, because very often we don't want to share the negative feelings that we may have with caregiving. We feel guilt about it, like it means that we don't love our loved one. No, not at all. It's just that we've hit a wall emotionally. We're probably suffering from burnout, and you kind of need to let those toxins out. You can't keep them bottled up inside. You've got to talk to someone. Now, maybe it's a best friend. Maybe it's your sister or brother, your sibling who knows that parent, or whomever. If you're caring for a spouse, maybe you talk to your friends who are also married, and they can certainly maybe empathize with a little bit of what you're experiencing. Maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a faith-based person, but whoever it is, you've got to talk to someone to share both the good and the bad. Because at the end of the day, we know you love your loved one. We know that you've chosen, most of you, many of you have chosen to do this. I know some people do feel forced into their caregiving roles, but for the most part, particularly if it's an older parent, it's part of our honor to them. It's the kind of the obligation of giving back or whatever. But we do have those moments where we just can't take it anymore, and we got to get it out, because once you get it out, it's like a purge, right? You all of a sudden, I'm not a big person on cleanses, but I have friends who are really into the cleansing trends, and they always tell me that once they do a cleanse, they feel so much better. Okay, buy that. It's similar. You're kind of doing a cleanse on the negative emotions and feelings that you might have with caregiving, so that you can restart, refresh, feel a little bit lighter, not feel all of that baggage on your shoulders or in your gut. So the rage runs, those are interesting, and I say, go for it, whatever helps you out. I do want to say that part of this article really made me go back to some of the workshops I do. We talk about the 5 stages of grief. Actually, there's 6 stages of grief now, because David Kessler's written his wonderful book, The 6th Stage of Grief is Finding Meaning, which is really an important step, I think. But the 5th stage of grief that we've all, all know pretty much the 5 stages of grief, right? It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally, 5th stage, acceptance. And this article really kind of, I think, talked to that 5th stage of acceptance. And let's face it, when we become caregivers, it's not always a joyful experience. You can find joy throughout your experience, and I talk a lot about that, particularly in the dementia community. But it's not like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, oh, I'm getting married, oh, I'm going on a trip. It's not that kind of a joyful experience, right? It's more of, oh my gosh, and there's fear, and there might be sadness, and of course there's guilt, and there's grief. There's all kinds of emotions going on when a loved one, and again, particularly if it is maybe an older parent who was always strong and there for you, and now all of a sudden they're frail and they're vulnerable, or maybe they've been diagnosed with something awful. So it really speaks to those 5 stages of grief that we go through once we become caregivers. We start the grief process at diagnosis or crisis, not at death. That's a misnomer. Grief is, something that we experience throughout our lives. Like, you can experience after you lose a job. You can experience after maybe your marriage goes kaput and you get divorced. There's a lot of ways that we go through these 5 stages of grief, and to really understand them and accept them and embrace them, even the anger stage, and I talk about this in the workshop, is really important. So it's all about really letting go. And again, accepting and knowing you cannot control everything. You can't control these diseases. You can't control the crisis or the emergency. You can't control some of the decisions your parent may want to make. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, that's not going to work. And that's where we have the dialogues and the conversations and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, balance is what we're looking for in life. If you really want your life to be as calm and stress-free as possible, find the pockets of happiness, have that through string, if you will, of joy in your life, you've got to find balance. If you feel out of control as a caregiver, you've got to find the control somewhere else. And you can do it. There's a lot of ways that we can get back control. And I talk about it in the Me Time Monday book and workshops and the videos that we do on YouTube. It's just, you have to focus on it. Doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of money, but there's little ways you can get back that control. One other thing I wanted to share that I just thought was so beautiful in this article, and then I'll move on. It was Suzanne Bottom Jones, who's 58, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and given only, a couple years to live. And so every morning during her 8 months of chemotherapy, she and her husband, Rick, danced to Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran. Love that song. The song is about aging and love and ends with the chorus, "We found love right where we are." Makes me cry, makes me tear up. And Rick says, "We decided to choose joy every day despite her diagnosis, and that helped give us hope." So, there are ways to, again, take back the control, eliminate and erase the negativity and try to find the silver lining, try to find the positivity, reconnecting with a spouse, reconnecting with a parent or a grandparent or whomever it is that you're caregiving in your life is really critical. Okay, so moving on to our next piece of news. The sandwich generation, this is interesting. So this is actually over in the UK. And there's the UK tends to be a little bit ahead of us, particularly when it comes to, they have a national health plan over there. So there's a lot of support from kind of more of the healthcare, long-term care system. But they're also very innovative in kind of helping the loneliness that they see with their senior population. They've come up with different programs and, different innovative ideas. And so we see a lot of really interesting stuff come out of the UK. And this, I came across this, and I wanted to share it. It's called the Anti-Burnout Club. It's like, let's just name it and let's fight it. And it was started by this woman, Bex Hamilton, who moved in with her father, who has Parkinson's, and her mother, who was recovering from a stroke. And she also has 3 young children under the age of 18, and she runs her own business. God bless you, woman. Um, and so she decided to start this club because she's like, I've got to talk to other people who are doing something similar. This is driving me crazy. And obviously, I'm feeling burnout. And she felt so much better. And what I really loved about her story is she also has embraced what I love, which is this kind of neurodesign, tapping into your brain and what calms it and soothes it, and also biophilic design for her home. So she's created a kind of little sanctuary space that's kind of got this green feel, lots of plants, some beautiful sunlight coming in. It's her sanctuary where she goes and reads or listens to music and just kind of gets away from all the craziness and the chaos, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. So I thought that was beautiful. And she said, you can't let one thing drop because that might mean a child not getting attention, a parent not being cared for, or your job suffering. And she was talking about that juggling act. And I know you all feel it out there who are Sandwich Generation members. So just hang in because maybe you want to start an anti-burnout club with some of your fellow Sandwich Generation caregivers. I think it's really great to have that kind of support where you can, again, you can all vent. You can vent and get all the good stuff, the toxic, emotions out, and maybe get some good, suggestions on how to handle things. Okay. Moving on, there was another news story that came out about Gen Z. That's kind of mostly our younger generation who are now adults and in the workplace and otherwise, and how they're becoming sandwich generation or how they're looking at maybe becoming sandwich generation caregivers. And they are delaying the birth of their first child. But here's what's happening. Okay, so 68% of adults say the cost of raising children makes them less likely to become parents. Okay, so that's so sad. That makes me really sad that your economic situation, and I'm not saying it's not real, boy, is it real. That's going to make you not have children, which could be such a blessing in your life. I mean, gosh, I know they cost a lot, those little kitties, but just what you get back is so amazing. So that's kind of a sad statistic. And one of the things is that women do want to delay having their first child. They want to get out there in the workplace or have their adventures or do whatever it is before they, take on this responsibility. I think that's probably very adult. You don't want to go into things when you're not ready. But on the other hand, as I've been told by my mom, by many other people, you're never ready. You're never ready. Just do it. Just do it because if you try to plan this out perfectly or wait until the right moment, it's Murphy's Law. It's just not going to happen. So if you think you want kids, just go for it and you'll figure it out along the way. And hopefully you got a good partner, a good spouse that'll help you with that. But just the fact that they're delaying the childbirth means that there might be costly fertility treatments. A lot of my friends went through that to have their children because they did wait until their late 30s and 40s to start having kids. And as we know, that becomes a lot tougher. And then at the same time, their parents are older because maybe their parents had them, Gen Z, a little bit older. So now you've got, okay, I'm an older parent and I've got older parents myself that now I'm having to care for. And so 69% of Gen Z and millennials report concern about future senior care responsibilities for parents and grandparents. And because nearly 30%, even though they may not have children yet, they're still contemplating it, 30% of them are already caring for older relatives. So they're already into the senior care. So that's another little factoid in, oh my gosh, I'm taking care of mom or dad or in-laws or grandparents or aunt, uncle, whatever it is. And now I want to have children too. How am I going to do this? Right. It's a dilemma. So anyway, it's just, I don't have a solution. I do think that if you truly want to have children, as I said, don't overthink it. You'll figure it out. But we do need to figure out how do we help, particularly, I think, the middle class. We've got some really great safety nets for people who are on the very lowest income in our society. And then, of course, the one percenters and all those other folks we don't need to worry about. They've got plenty of money to have nannies and help and housekeepers and, chefs and chauffeurs and all that kind of stuff that most of us don't have. But we got to figure something out for the middle class, because we cannot have the middle class saying, I can't have kids because I can't afford it. Or, I can't have kids because I know I got to take care of my parents who are living longer. And so now what? It's not, to me, it's something that we're not paying enough attention to. We talk a lot about children. We don't talk about the elder care, and they go together, folks. I'm sorry, we're living longer. We've got the longevity in our families now. We got to face it. This is something we have to take a look at. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was a very important message for many of you out there. And then finally, in our Caregiver Wellness news, I wanted to share something with you because, as I mentioned, we're coming up on first day of spring. We're going to have more sunlight. We're going to have our daylight savings change out here pretty soon. And it's also National Sleep Awareness Week, March 8th through the 14th. And I had come across this, actually one study that had been done, and now I'm seeing a few others. And it's all around melatonin use and actually melatonin overdose. So we have seen an increase in melatonin overdose since the pandemic by about 530%. That's insane. That's insane. I kept thinking, is that a typo? But I did some research and it was showing up in a few different places. So I think it's right. But those were based on the poison center calls that were being made for people who felt like maybe they had toxicity from too much melatonin. And part of this is because, our sleep is disrupted, particularly as we know through the pandemic, but even before and after. And particularly for caregivers, right? I mean, you need to get good sleep, and it's crazy. You've got insomnia, you're tossing and turning. Maybe you're not getting enough hours. Maybe you're not going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time. All the things we tell you should do to get good sleep habits and good sleep science going really become a challenge for caregivers in particular. So, hey, let me grab some melatonin. I mean, right? We kind of are like, hey, if I could take a pill to solve everything, wouldn't that be fabulous? Yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work that way, unfortunately, most of the time. So anyway, the melatonin overdoses are 8 times higher since the pandemic. That almost didn't make sense to me either, but I get it. And so here's the thing: 1 to 5 milligrams. That's it. That's for adults. For children, it's even lower. 1 to 5 milligrams. If you're thinking, hey, if I double this up to 10 milligrams, it'll work twice as good, don't do it. Okay, that's what's happening here. And it can, everything in moderation is probably okay. And the minute you start going overboard and thinking, oh, well, I'll do 2 or 4 times because, hey, if it worked once or it works pretty good, but I want it to work better, it doesn't work that way. So you have to be really, really careful about these things. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you because we got, we're thinking about melatonin and sleep and all those things. Also, a couple other things I just want to point out. March 7th is National Unplugging Day. Love that. And so I've done a infographic that we're going to put the infographic up here so you can take a look at it. And we're also going to have it on our newscast page on our website at caregivingclub.com. But it's my version of it's mostly stuff out of my book, Me Time Monday. But I take what I call retro analog hacks for a digital detox. Now, what does that mean? Okay. Well, here you go. I'm going to do the 5 senses. I love to break things down, as you guys know, into the 5 senses because that's how our brains work. And when you're doing something that taps into those 5 senses, you're really kind of tapping into different regions of the brain, which is really great for brain health. So I'd love to do the 5 senses breakdown. So here's the first one, sight. Okay, I just mentioned Reading Nook, that the Anti-Burnout Club founder in the UK said she loves. Finding a Reading Nook, because March is also Read Across America Day. And that's mostly for kids, by the way, but it could be for us kids who are older. But you're escaping, right? So make it a sanctuary place. Can be just a small little thing under the staircase or a little corner of the room, with a favorite comfy chair or whatever. But make it a place that you can go and you can read your book and escape into that world. Or maybe you just stare out the window and kind of have those moments of calm, nothing else going on, nobody talking to you, nothing happening. You're not listening to this newscast or podcast or anything. So that's sight. Sound. Okay, let's switch it up now. Listen to music. And music is so important to our soul. It's about beat matching, which is something that calmed us when we were in the womb of our moms. Our heartbeats matched our mom's heartbeat. So we love that kind of boom, boom, boom. And it's, life affirming. So listen to some music and, close your eyes. Don't, by the way, use your earbuds. Now, this is the retro part of this, okay? Have the music fill the room. Immerse yourself in it. It's really hard, honestly, to immerse yourself when you've got the earbuds on. Now, I know that doesn't sound intuitive because the earbuds are canceling out anything else in the room. But if you close the door and you listen to the music in a room, it really is a lot more immersive than just using your earbuds. So try that. That's my analog hack, okay? Next thing, smell. This is a really interesting one. Okay. I hate cleaning my house. I've shared with many of my friends and people that my idea of hell would be having to constantly clean my house. So please, 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 please don't let that happen. I love it when it's clean and I feel great, but it's such a slog. But here's something really interesting. A lot of people love cleaning, right? I mean, my mom is one of those. It's like everything you can eat off the garage floor at my mom's house. But cleaning, a lot of the cleaning supplies that we use, there's aromatherapy that actually calms and soothes a lot of people and can even help subside certain nausea, certain anxiety. And they're using it now at MD Anderson, which is a noted national cancer center, to help people who are undergoing MRIs. They're having them smell and sniff some of these cleaning supplies and scents before they go under for an MRI to calm them. I thought that was fascinating. So those of you who love to clean, you got something going on there. Now, here's one I can get into though. Touch. Washing dishes. Okay. My dishwasher. Now, this is where we become the Luddites. We bust that technology. We turn our back on the digital and the electrical and all the technology in our lives. We go back to the olden days when we used to wash the dishes. I love washing dishes because it's just me living in my home, thankfully. I mean, yes, I do occasionally the boyfriend or whatever, but it's just me and it's my hands are in soapy warm water. I'm just feeling so calm. It feels good. It's almost like taking a little mini bath, but just with my hands. But you know what? And it makes me feel again, I've accomplished something. It only takes me less than 7 minutes to clean the dishes. And I've saved on the electrical from the dishwasher. But, again, it probably sounds silly, but that's a retro hack. We all used to have to do the dishes. If you're as old as I am, we had to do the dishes when we were kids. And then some of us did have the dishwashers even when we were kids. But anyway, that was kind of one of our chores, right? Did I get them all in? Oh, taste. So, this is a fun one. So, this is something my mom and I are doing right now, and it's become really fun. We decided we were spending way too much money eating out, and so we wanted to save money. And my mom loves to cook, and many of you know from on my podcast, I can't cook at all. So I'm so grateful when somebody wants to make me a home cooked meal. So I'll do the grocery shopping and I'll do the cleaning up. I'll do the washing of the dishes afterwards. But my mom cooks meals that we had when I was a kid. And we are having so much fun. We're going back to these old recipes. She's going back even to recipes when she was a kid from my grandma and pulling out, applesauce with cinnamon sprinkled on it. So it's just, it's that savory, warm, wonderful comfort food that does remind you of your childhood. And then we start these conversations about, oh, do you remember this or whatever? Anyway, it's really kind of fun and it's something you may want to try, but it's kind of like let's taste something from our past to kind of make us get that smile going and feel good. So those are my 7 retro analog hacks for a digital detox for National Unplugging Day. Hope you enjoyed those. And then just a really quick note. I'm going to also have our Me Time Monday self-care solutions in 7 minutes video on global wellness because International Happiness Day is March 20th. So we're going to be sharing that. That'll be on our YouTube channel. And we also post it on social media. And then for those of you who may have missed the 6th annual CareCon event held by Hilarity for Charity, it was held on February 25th. Again, I was so honored to be a workshop presenter on caregiver anxiety and wellness. And they did record. And so they're going to send me a link and I will share that with you. But you can watch it on demand, which is the great news in case you missed it. And that's, of course, a free event put on by Lauren Miller Rogan and Seth Rogen, who started Hilarity for Charity. So with that, let's now go to our Well Home Design news. So, Well Home Design news, as I mentioned, National Sleep Awareness Week is March 8th through the 14th this year. I have some infographics and blogs and videos and stuff that I'm going to be sharing on the Caregiving Club website, but also on our YouTube channel. And I just wanted to share a couple of these up front with you. And we'll show the graphic on the screen as I'm talking. But I did one on 7 foods that will aid your sleep. And that includes kiwis, tart cherries. And they have to be the dark tart cherries. They can't be like the orange pinky cherries that are great, but they don't work as well. Warm milk. And if you're lactose intolerant, yes, soy, oats, almond milk will work. Chamomile tea, almonds. We like the omega-3 fatty fish like salmon. But you could also do turkey, which has tryptophan. In fact, it has more tryptophan than salmon does, which is something that's going to help, with your sleep. And then some light oats or rice. So we'll have more in the blog that'll be on the Caregiving Club website. But I wanted to share this infographic with you in case you're interested. Yes, these are foods that you should eat. Now, don't eat them 10 minutes before bed. Remember the rule, 3 hours to aid digestion before you go to sleep. So these are all foods you should be eating, or in the case of the milk and tea, drinking 3 or more hours before you go to bed. Don't want to eat anything close to sleep time because your digestion is still working and there's still energy going into it that isn't going to help you get to sleep. And then I also did one on the 5 senses of sleep. As you know, I like to break things down again into, the brain health, 5 senses. So this one was, okay, for sight, we want to turn off those blue lights an hour before bed. No blue light, nothing emitting from your television, from your smartphone or tablet, from your audiobook, quite frankly, even from your lamps. I know people like to read in bed, but anything that has a blue light that's emitting, if you have an alarm clock that's electrical, that's plugged in, those are all bad. As I write in my Me Time Monday book, you want to replace those blue light night lights that you may have with the amber lights, kind of orange, pinky. I have the orange, but I also just got some pink Himalayan salt night lights, loving it because it's helping my air care as well as not letting my brain wake up if I have to get up at night. So that's sight. For sound, pink noise. We've talked about this before. Again, it's in my Me Time Monday book, but pink noise is on the sonic spectrum of different sounds. And pink noise is the one that most resembles nature sounds, soft nature sounds like little raindrops, soft waves on the beach. There's also green noise, and a lot of commercials I've seen for some meditation apps promote the green noise. It is also a nature sound on that sonic hue spectrum, but it's a little, what would be the right word? Louder. Okay, harder raindrops and things like that. I like the pink noise. And pink noise, by the way, is the number one suggested from pediatricians all the way to geriatricians. So from your kids to your older parents, Pink noise is the one that is recommended. And if you have tinnitus, or some people say tinnitus, it's also the best kind of noise sound that you should use. Taste. Okay, well, we just went through it. Kiwi, cherries, tart cherries, tea, and milk. I would say those are your top four, but the others are great too. Smell, lavender. The ancient Egyptians used this, so hey, we can't, our way to argue with thousands of years of wellness and all kinds of health that comes from those ancient Egyptians and Romans and everybody else that I researched for my book on Me Time Monday. So lavender helps you get to sleep. And then finally for touch, you want the cool temperature. You've got to have it at 68 degrees. This is simulating how we experience sleeping out on the African savanna, millions of years ago, 1 or 2 million years ago, when we slept outside. So we've got to have those temperatures lower. Now, I know, again, as you get older, your extremities kind of get a little cold at night. If you're keeping the room temperature cold, what you can do is you can wear a little nightcap, little knit cap, or whatever, kind of fabric. Put some socks on. Seen people do that. We also have a lot of people who use weighted blankets, and this really helps mostly with anxiety. If you have a lot of anxiety and you toss and turn at night, just make sure that that weighted blanket is no more than 10% of your body weight. You don't want it too heavy because that's not going to be any good. And by the way, those are also used in nursing homes and in some memory care communities to help older dementia patients who might be a little agitated at night. As we know, with Alzheimer's and dementia, they tend to be more active at night. So using those weighted blankets is something that they've done as well. And then also we're going to have our sleep health hacks in our Me Time Monday Self-Care in 7 Minutes video. Those are on our YouTube channel. You can go check them all out. And then for kids, because I know a lot of you are sandwich generation caregivers, I'm also going to recommend a book that I thought was adorable. It's really fun to read to your kids. They'll really like it. And it really talks about sleep. And it's the Dr. Seuss Sleep Book, which is perfect for March because March 2nd is Read Across America Day, celebrating Dr. Seuss and his wonderful characters that he created for us as kids that we still love as adults. So the Dr. Seuss Sleep Book, you can check that out. And then just really quickly, we've done great podcast interviews with so many wonderful experts in the sleep science area. So you can check out Wendy Trexel, who is an author and researcher. She's on season 4, episode 37. She talks about what are the best sleep positions. Also, how do you sleep best with a partner in the bed with you? And what is the Scandinavian sleep method? Very interesting, but it's something that they use with partners in Scandinavia. Dan Gartenberg, who is the founder and CEO of Sleep Space, came on our season 5, episode 52 podcast talking about sleep tech. So he gave us some really terrific insights, what works and what doesn't. And that's something you should definitely check out if you're into like wearing the Aura ring or your watch, your Apple Watch or whatever else at night. It tells you what works and what doesn't. And then Rick Renner, who is the CEO of DreamPad, he came on our season 3, episode 22 podcast, and he talked about the pillows that DreamPad creates, which really have to do with vibrational energy and how our hearing and our ears work in terms of getting us to sleep at night, what kind of sounds are best, and how the pillows are optimized for that. Really fascinating stuff going on out there. So you can check out those podcast interviews on our YouTube channel and also on Apple Podcast and Spotify and, all kinds of other listening channels. And then, National Dream Day is March 11th. And for many of you who have a loved one with Parkinson's, you may already know this, but in early stage and mid stage of Parkinson's, and well before you're diagnosed, actually, about 20, sometimes even 30 years before you're diagnosed, a risk factor for Parkinson's that you should pay attention to is of course, our bodies are engineered so brilliantly that we do not act out our dreams at night, right? We don't get up and run away from the person who's chasing us or whatever it is. That's just how it works. Our muscles and everything are into relaxation mode and they don't move. However, with Parkinson's, person does sometimes get up. They do start maybe sometimes acting out. They can punch in the bed. If you've ever been punched in the face by your loved one, if they're having a dream, these are just things to be mindful of, because if you or your loved one is experiencing this and you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s, it could be a risk factor that you may want to check out with your doctor. And we also know that people with Parkinson's continue to have those kinds of nightmares. They also have hallucinations. And so, where they see things that aren't really there. So it's just something to pay attention to. And particularly for those of us who are caregivers of those with Parkinson's or, maybe. Then I wanted to share with you some great stuff out of the big, huge kitchen and bath show in Las Vegas. So fun to see all the wonderful trends. Every time I go, I want to redo my kitchen. But there was something that was talked about, and I wanted to share this with you. It was a really great panel discussion, and it was, of course, on neurodesign. This is the big thing, by the way, folks. I've now gotten my certificate on neurodesign, and it's really how to understand how the brain relates to our living environments. It also applies to things like commercial development and office environments as well, but it's really about where we live, how to optimize our homes in a design perspective to have calm, to de-stress, to also help promote good brain health. So this was a big discussion, but what's really interesting is that there are several now. Now they're on the luxury end. So these are on the high end, but there's a lot of luxury apartments that are being built that are catering to older adults over the age of 55. And but they're really being built intentionally. And these first ones are in Italy that they were showing us, but it's where there are shared wellness areas, a dedicated in-house longevity clinic with concierge medicine, doctors on call, digital health monitoring devices that you can either check out and rent or get subscriptions to, and a lot of other furnishings and things, like a lot of the curves that we talk about and the color psychology that we talk about in neurodesign and biophilic design, which is nature design in the home. But they also have advanced air microfiltration systems for good air care quality, water microfiltration systems for, of course, purity and safety, DMX lighting systems with programmed circadian-friendly light scenarios. This is becoming big. The lighting in the home is so important. And I'm seeing so many office buildings now, and certainly homes that are really adopting these DMX lighting systems, which is interesting. Also, the immersive Dolby Atmos audio systems. So again, we were just talking about pink noise. You can tap right into that. You don't have to get a little sound machine or whatever. And it has low emissions in terms of a lot of this stuff not giving off a lot of those blue light emissions. So just kind of interesting. And one of the quotes from one of the panelists was, health and wellness are no longer just a moment or an occasional experience, but have become a permanent part of architecture, our homes, and our daily lives. So I'm going to be speaking at a Raymond James financial services event in Miami next week. And I've been invited to check out the Waldorf Astoria residences, which are in Miami, because they are supposed to be known in Miami as one of the best wellness-oriented housing projects that is in Miami. So they have a lot of, they have the hyperbaric chambers, they have the cold plunge stuff. They have a lot of the stuff that we talk about in longevity, but they also have some other things. So maybe I'll share that with you after I do a tour and let you know. But they do have the oxygen hyperbaric chambers. I may try it. I don't know. I'm a little scared, but maybe I'll put my, guts together and go for it. Tell you guys how it feels if you haven't done it already. And then I want to also share with you about home design. I came across this app and I was like, what? As you know, I write a blog called The Snug Home, and it is actually part of what I'm doing as I'm researching my third book, which is going to be called The Snug Home. And the Snug name is very dear to me because if you read about it on our caregivingclub.com website under Snug Home, it tells you the history behind it, but it has to do with my beloved grandmother, also has to do with my beloved stepfather who was in the Navy. So the Snug Home name is really important to me. But when I came across this app, I wasn't mad, but I was like, oh wow, okay, people are jumping onto the Snug train. But it's called the Snug Safety app, and it's actually really interesting. we have a lot of wearables that'll do a lot of things. Smart fall detection. I work with a company, I think I've mentioned, Care, that has great smart fall detection, but also great advanced GPS technology. So if you have a loved one with dementia who wanders and they're wearing the wearable, they can find them within 15 feet. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I know the Apple Watch has some stuff. Some of their apps, though, I'll just tell you, like the fall detection is not quite as good as some that are intentionally designed for that, like Care. And again, I'm biased because I work for, do some work for Care, some consulting. But this is interesting because this is simply for solo agers, and there's, I think, 22 million people over 55 are living alone. So they're very independent. They're mobile, for the healthy for the most part. Doesn't You don't have to be. You could be a little bit more frail and vulnerable and living at home, aging in place alone. But what it's intended for is for someone who does want someone notified if something goes wrong, like if you fall, I will know if you're not checking in with somebody on a daily basis. So this gives you kind of the dignity, the privacy. It doesn't do anything else, but all it does is it sends you a text. And so again, you can get it on your smartphone. You can get it on if you have a wearable that you can get texts on. But it just says, checking in with you today. How you doing? You hit the doing okay button. Now, if you don't hit it, then guess what? People you've put onto your subscription, family members probably for the most part, are going to be notified. And you can set a certain time during the day that you always check in, but at least that kind of gives some connectivity, gives some peace of mind to maybe your family members and friends out there who worry about you or whatever it is. So it's kind of a very, very simplified version of what a lot of these more sophisticated wearables and technology will give you. It doesn't do anything other than that. It is free if you just do one check-in a day. But if you want more than one check-in, then there is a subscription model that's related to that. So anyway, not a lot of bells and whistles, but I thought it was worth sharing, particularly because of the name, Snug Safety, Snug Safety app. Maybe we could do something with them, with the Snug Home. So with that, we're now going to move into our segment on caregiving in the workplace. For our Caregiving in the Workplace segment, I've got two surveys that were just done last month by different organizations, and I want to go through them. The first one is from care.com and their Care for Business unit, which supports employers with different benefits and services and things of that nature that are related to caregiving across the lifespan. So it includes parent care, parenting, as well as senior care, pet care. So they kind of run all the gamut of the people and things that we love in our life. But this is the 13th year that they've done this cost of care survey. And they surveyed over 3,000 employees who provided feedback, and about a good, one third, a little over one third were sandwich generation. So again, caring for both children as well as for older parents or an older loved one, could be a grandparent or in-law or aunt or uncle or whomever. So here are some interesting results from that survey that I wanted to share. First of all, almost 4 in 10, so about 37% of the sandwich generation have hired some type of senior care help. So in the same way that they are, taking children to daycare, or getting nannies and getting help with children, they're also getting senior care help. Now that's still under half, but it's a little higher than some of the things that I've seen. So that's looks like there's more awareness, hopefully maybe some more affordability in helping to take care of older loved ones. Some of the other things that the survey found, so the caregivers say 90% of them say I've lost sleep. We just talked about all the sleep stuff we need to do. Unfortunately, caregivers are really challenged with sleep and insomnia and awakenings during the night and all the things, not getting enough hours, not going to bed or getting up at the same time. All the things that we know that really aid our brain health while we sleep and keep our bodies in that circadian rhythm, which is so important. Caregivers aren't really getting that. 89% feel burned out. 88% feel like they're sacrificing their career goals and other lifestyle goals in life. 82% said that they feel alone or isolated. And we know, again, U.S. Surgeon General report a few years ago said 1 in 2 American adults feel lonely. We know that this can lead to cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and all kinds of really awful physical health later in life. 81% that said that they cry from stress. That was really sad. That finding. I hadn't seen that in a lot of other surveys. And again, on and on, impacting physical health, yes. Sense of dread, yes. 20% of their annual income, monthly income, is going to childcare, and 17% is going to senior care. 37% of their annual take-home pay is going for care. That's big. Okay. And that's covering other things as well, including like housekeeping and pet care. So it's kind of the whole gambit of care, caring for your house, caring for your loved ones, caring for your pets. You put all that in a big financial pile. It's about 37% of annual or of monthly take-home pay. That's why a lot of uh, moms and women and caregivers in the workplace who are women are sacrificing their careers. They're saying, you know what, this is unattainable. I'll just stay home, be the caregiver, the housekeeper, and everything else, but not having that money go out of pocket. Um, it also said that the average spend was about $795 a week on senior care alone. So that's getting somebody to maybe come into the house. Maybe it's a respite care, just a companion. Maybe it is somebody to help with, some meal prep or housekeeping in their loved one's house, their loved one's house, whatever it is. Almost 6 in 10 have thought about leaving their job. That's pretty consistent with other surveys that we've seen throughout the years. But it's something we're not bringing down. It's not a number that we really want to see. More women who are caregivers than men who are caregivers feel guilt. They also feel doubt and analyze what's going on with their caregiving needs of their loved ones. This is really interesting because when I wrote my first book, which was now 13 years ago, there was a study that came out from Bowling Green University, and it said, men and women respond to their caregiving role and responsibilities differently. And typically, more women and more natural nurturers. It's just part of our DNA, part of being moms or whatever. But we tend to overanalyze our performance as caregivers, and this leads to higher anxiety, higher rates of depression or sadness, certainly guilt, and therefore our emotional health is really compromised. Now, for the men who were caregivers in this particular study, what they found is that more men seek outside help. So more men are calling in the professional caregivers to say, hey, I do need you to come watch my mom. She lives at home alone. Or, maybe they're making that decision to have their loved one go live in an assisted living or memory care community or whatever it is, but they're getting the help. They're not doing the hands-on day-to-day caregiving themselves. The other thing that men did is they don't analyze their performance. They just do what the researchers called it a block and tackle approach. They got a list of things they got to get done related to caregiving, and they just check it off as they go. And when they can check it off, they feel they've accomplished something. They actually feel good. They feel like they are helping their parent or in-law. They feel like they're giving back, and they're not worried about, did mom or dad like the food I served them this morning or prepared for them this morning? Is dad lonely during the day? Don't think about it. Just do it. Do it, get it done, check it off. So very interesting approach, right? I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but I will say to my female caregiver colleagues out there that, we may want to try less analysis and more patting ourselves on the back that we're even doing this role, that we're able to keep it together, and we have those precious moments, right? We get those silver lining moments with our parent or other loved one. But just don't worry about it so much. I know it's easy to say, hard to do, but it's just something for us to think about. Now, going into what the survey also was looking at is what would help. And of course, some of these they're not asked open-ended. So it's from what I was able to see from the methodology, it's, you check the box or whatever. So you're given a certain list from the researchers on this survey, and then you can decide to check none of them or check some of them or whatever it is. And I have some commentary on that, and I'm going to share with you first, though, because Pew also did something similar in their Aging in America survey that just came out. They had a whole section on caregiving, and they asked some of these same questions. So I'm going to compare the two. So care.com, 95% of the respondents said they would like to have tax credits for their care-related expenses. Okay. On the Pew side, same question. So 95% in the care.com, 78% in the Pew study said, yes, want some tax credits for the care costs that I'm, digging into my pocket to pay for. So those things that we just talked about, the 20 to 37% of their monthly income. Okay, next thing. 93% in the care.com survey wanted employer subsidized caregiving benefits. Okay. In the Pew, they didn't really ask that question. So unfortunately, we don't have a comparison there. So 93% would like employers to help pay for caregiving benefits. And in the care.com survey, 91% said they would like universal child care. Now, what's interesting about this is it did not note senior care. It didn't note universal senior care. So, as we know, demographic wise, just looking at the numbers, folks, we're going to have more parents, more people over 65 in the country than children under 18. So, the child care is certainly very important, helps people decide on whether or not to have a family if they get that kind of support. But we have less children we need to really think about now than our seniors. So, we got to make some equality here in the kind of care that's going out there. And then in the Pew Research, of course, paying for short-term care for family caregivers who are employees to take a break and take care of their loved one. That's basically the Family Medical Leave Act, the Family Paid Medical Leave Act, FMLA. And it is the law in a number of states. I think it's probably 15 states or so, where it's mandatory, California being one of those states, mandatory 12 weeks off, paid by your employer if you need to take care of your loved one. And then some employers in states where it's not the law still make that decision. Yes, we're going to pay for a certain number of weeks for you to take off to take care of a senior loved one, not just take maternity or paternity leave. You're going to get the senior care leave as well. We'll pay for it. So individual companies and employers will do that. So that was one. And then the Pew Research said that 7 in 10 respondents said employers should have to pay for the paid leave. Okay, so mandatory is what they're saying. Every state, every employer. And then giving direct payments to help with caregiving costs. 63% in the Pew report said, yes, we would like to have cash or whatever direct payments given to me, and then I can decide what I'm going to use that for. But it obviously has to be used for the senior care costs that I'm taking in. So a couple of comments from me on this. First of all, tax credits, absolutely. Why we can't pass this, I have no freaking idea. Hey, come on, folks. We do have some, like if you can claim 50% dependency, then you can, on your tax return, of course, you can certainly claim your loved one, but nobody else can be claiming them, of course. And, you have to show all of the receipts and everything for that 50% plus that you're taking care of for them. But tax credits are a no-brainer, and please, Congress, pay attention and do this because it's really important, and it would help even that little break. Now, on the employer subsidized caregiving benefits, okay, here's my comment on that. Care.com recently announced that they now have a care navigation service. So in addition to being able to go online and find a caregiver that matches up with what you're looking for, so yeah, this person has been working for a long time in this space. They speak Spanish. They know how to prepare traditional Spanish meals, which my mom will love. Um, they've got a good rating, and, I'm going to talk to them about their price and we'll negotiate, and that's how that's done. So that is a service of care.com. But now what care.com is also offering is, and this has been offered through their employer clients so that employees could tap into this in the past, but now it's open to everybody, is what we call care navigation. Now, in my mind, care navigation is probably the number one thing that employers can do to benefit their employees in the workplace. And here's why. Caregiving is not one size fits all. We all have very individualized, personalized, different circumstances. Is it a spouse? Is it a child who is neurodivergent? Is it a sibling? Is it my parents or in-laws? Is it my grandparents? And all of those things are different based on what do they have? Did they have a heart attack and they're rehabilitating at home? Are they, did they get diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's? Anyway, I could go on and on and on and on and on. And during the caregiving journey, by the way, things change. You may start in a crisis, and then the fall that mom had, she's rehabbed, she's feeling better, but now it's something else. Now something else may have happened. So the caregiving journey, your needs change. So to try to figure out, well, what benefit can we give all these employees and make it equal? The care navigation to me is the simplest one, because what it does is it gives access to employees to experts who are senior care experts. They understand the local community, home and community-based services that you can access. So let's just say your mom lives in Florida and you live in Arizona or Wisconsin. Okay, you need the services in Florida. You need an expert who's going to tell you, well, okay, you're thinking about assisted living. Let me give you some insights. This one, pretty good. This one, not so good. Doesn't have a very good rating. Or the cost is way high, or whatever it is. This service, oh yeah, the Meals on Wheels is really active, and you can definitely get this. If your loved one lives in a rural area, there's a lot less services, and this is where these care navigation experts really dig deep to find you the help. But again, in my mind, it's doing two things. One, it's getting you quickly to trusted resources, because these folks know what's good and bad, what it's going to cost. You would spend hours and hours and hours and hours you don't have on the internet trying to figure that out. And then even once you feel like you got an answer, you're going to still question yourself. You're not an expert at this. You're going, oh, is that really right? I don't know. The senior care experts know. Okay. So you're going to save yourself time. You're going to save yourself peace of mind. You're going to know this is trusted. I can go for it. I can use this. And it gets you where you need to go quicker and hopefully cheaper. And you can look for ways to save on costs. Maybe there's some veterans benefits that'll cover some of this stuff. They'll tell you, the care navigators. So again, I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm preaching this all the time now. Care navigation has got to be really, I think, the one thing that we look at from an employer standpoint. The thing that is really tough about the paid FMLA, and people don't maybe understand this as well who haven't run a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own business. I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom and my stepdad were entrepreneurs. My brother's an entrepreneur. They've all run their own businesses. And by the way, 99.9% of all businesses in the United States, representing 36.2 million firms as of 2026, are considered small businesses. That means they have fewer than 500 employees, which is still big. I mean, heck, I have a business and it's pretty much me and maybe a handful of people. They employ roughly half of all private sector employees, 62 million people, and they drive the majority of job growth. The burden on these small businesses to have to pay for leave is untenable. We will lose a good percentage of small businesses who will just have to go bankrupt. They can't afford it. Because if you're in a service, particularly a service sector, where let's just say my family's in the food business, so this is an easy one for me. They operate cafeterias. Okay, let's say the cafeteria worker, mom just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Um, the cook in the cafeteria needs to take the 12 weeks off paid to go deal with all the things they need to deal with caregiving wise. Okay, that sounds nice. That sounds great. But guess what? The employer can't just have nobody cook. People still need to eat. You still need to run your business. So not only are you paying for the employee who has taken the time off, you're now doubling your employee costs because you've got to bring somebody in to take that person's job to fill in while they're gone for 12 weeks. And then when they come back, their expectation and the law says they have to get a similar level job. Now, it's not always the same job because, again, sometimes that's just not doable, but it has to be at a similar level, very similar. Okay. Well, if you don't need two cooks in that cafeteria, now what do you do with the person who's now come back, right? It's a huge dilemma when you start to think through all these details. And all I want people to think about out there, because I have a lot of colleagues who are fighting the good fight on Capitol Hill in the States and in Washington, D.C., and I really applaud them because they are fierce warriors on behalf of family caregivers. But we have to be also practical about what the ask is. And when we put that kind of burden on businesses who are employing people, think about it. What if half of these businesses went bankrupt? Now, not only are the caregivers not going to get paid leave, they don't have a job and they might need it. So, again, I'm just trying to tell people, think from all aspects. Look at all aspects. It's the same thing. I've been in so many different advisory committees, and in many of these, and it's well intentioned, but people are thinking with their 9-to-5 white collar office worker hats when they talk about caregivers in the workplace. And I was always the one to raise my hand and say, okay, hold on. What about the shift workers? What about the hourly workers? What about people who are waitresses or cooks or work at retail? That's different. It's a different scenario. We have to be able to support all caregivers if we're looking at this kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but very interesting surveys. And obviously, I'm very encouraged with the fact that companies like care.com, they get it. They've got care navigation. If you need it, you can tap into that. If you are working for an employer who maybe happens to have their service or other services that are out there, you can ask about that. But I think it's probably one of the best bets because it's the thing that they can maybe afford to give to employees. And then that would get you more personalized help. So anyway, that's just caregiving in the workplace. Now we're going on to pop culture. Before we jump into our pop culture segment, I just wanted to record this correction because unfortunately, when we recorded the pop culture segment you're about to hear, I incorrectly stated that it was Keith Carradine who had recently passed away from suicide, and that's actually incorrect. It was Robert Carradine, who was the youngest of the acting Carradine brothers. Many of you will remember maybe David Carradine, who played in the Kung Fu TV series. Keith Carradine has been in tons of films and TV series, but it was the younger brother, Robert, who recently passed away at 71 via suicide. And an interesting note that David Carradine died almost, I think, 20 years ago, but he also died around the same age. He was age 72, and he also died from suicide. So mental health issues are part of the Carradine family. And again, that's something that we see a lot when we are dealing with mental health, that either it will be siblings or parents or children and parents who are battling things like mental illness. So I just want to make that correction as you listen to the pop culture segment. Just keep in mind, it wasn't Keith Carradine who's passed away. He's still alive. It was his younger brother, Robert. For our pop culture segment for this episode, we are going to focus on a couple of things. First of all, the Oscars, the Academy Awards. are coming up on Sunday, March 12th. And in the past, I've done articles for PBS and other outlets about movies that have focused on different caregiving themes, particularly with dementia and Alzheimer's. And the same is true this year. So I'm going to do a shout out because there's a really great um, movie if you haven't seen it. It hasn't played in a lot of theaters. A lot of these are kind of smaller independent films, and it certainly has made the independent film circuit, won several awards in Venice, but it's called Familiar Touch. And the actress who is in it, Kathleen I think it's Chalfant is how you say her name, Chalfant, is up for Best Actress. So the movie itself is not up for a Best Film Oscar, but she is up for Best Actress, and certainly deservedly so. It is a wonderful look at the realities of an older person being diagnosed with dementia, as she is in the movie. Her character's name is Ruth. Uh, and so she goes to live in a memory care facility. What was really interesting, however, about this movie, and they go through her journey, of course, of the progression of the disease, the people that she's encountering, how she's coping with it, the fact that her son did eventually move her into this facility, which she didn't really want to go into memory care at the very beginning and all of that. So it goes through all of those heartbreaks and challenges that caregivers and their families have when a loved one is diagnosed. But what I thought was really spectacular is that the writer and director, and it is Sarah Susan Friedland, sorry, she actually filmed this at an assisted living, not a memory care, because she wasn't sure that people who have dementia would be able to authorize and okay the fact that they would be on film. But she did get an assisted living. Actually, it's our friends at Front Porch. So big shout out to Davis Park and Sean Kelly, their CEO. But they filmed at a Front Porch community in West Hollywood, I think is where it was. And it was called Villa Gardens, which is a French porch community. And that's a life plan community that has different levels of care on it. In Pasadena, sorry, it wasn't in Hollywood. I think it was in Pasadena. And a lot of the residents were actually part of the film. So either they were kind of the co-stars, they were people in the background, or even in some of the scenes with the actress who played Ruth. But some of them also served behind the scenes, like they did some artwork, they did some help with the casting calls. Anyway, I thought that was spectacular, and what a great backstory for a film, and one I hadn't really heard before in all these years of covering the Academy Awards and films and all those kinds of things. So, so a shout out to that director and the producers of this film, and also, as I said, Kathleen Chalfant. If you get a chance to see it, maybe you can stream it. If it's not available in theaters, she's just spectacular, and we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for her to win that Best Actress Oscar, as Julianne Moore did several years ago when she was in Still Alice. Oh, still one of those movies. It's a great movie. Her performance is beyond. So deservedly did she get that Oscar. But it's tough. It's early onset is the story, and she plays it just brilliantly. And it shows how each of the people in her sphere, her husband, her adult children, how they react and how they go through this with her. Now, the other thing that's happening out there is on television, and it's actually on regular TV, which I can't believe, because everything these days, if it's not on regular cable, which seems to now be the B list, everything's on streaming, right? They want to get you into those subscriptions. Oh my goodness, subscription overload. Anyway, so I am really, really enjoying this TV series on regular television, free television as I call it, kinda. It's not really free, but it kinda is. It's called Memory of a Killer, starring the good-looking Patrick Dempsey. I'm sorry, he gets better with age, definitely. But this is a really interesting twist on a story of Alzheimer's and dementia. So let me just play it out for you if you're not familiar with this new TV show, which, by the way, is getting really great reviews, but also lots of eyeballs. So it looks very like it's doing very well. So Patrick Dempsey plays a mafia assassin, okay, who's living a double life. So he has this very nice little life in Maine with originally it was with his wife and daughter, and unfortunately you learn throughout the series that his wife was killed in a car accident, but there's a twist to that. We're not quite sure what that all means, but there's definitely something behind there. But he's like a copier salesman, which cracks me up because who is buying copiers these days? I guess businesses still are, but anyway, he's got this nice little life in Maine. Then he has the double life where he goes to New York City and he's got this whole underground bunker where he keeps his speedy, I think it's a Porsche, but I'm not sure, but he keeps his speedy car and he's got slick Armani suits and he's got all the James Bond equipment you could ever want in this bunker. And he works for the mob. And it's his boyhood, childhood friend who actually runs this mafia group, I guess you'd call it. And it's okay, I'll think of the name of the actor, but he was in The Sopranos. He was so excellent. He played Christopher. Anyway, he's the head of the mob. And so now you're thinking, okay, oh wow, yeah, and I do like these kind of shows anyway. I love The Sopranos. But here's the twist. I think it's his older brother, but not by much, like only by a few years, is in memory care. And you learn throughout the series, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but you learn how they discovered, because he was also working for the mob, how they discovered that the brother had dementia. And then Patrick Dempsey, what he had to do to save his life, because, the mob doesn't really care about your disabilities and diseases, I don't think. I'm just going to make a blanket statement. Not that I would know, but I'm just going to assume they don't have any paid family leave. Now what's happening in the series is Patrick's character is, and I think his name is Alberto, but Patrick's character is starting to lose his memory. So he is in a wooded forest area where he's been a million times and he gets lost. He puts his gun in the refrigerator after you see him supposedly putting it in the safe behind the painting at night. So you're seeing what he's seeing. He thinks he did that, but he gets up the next morning and it's not. It's in the refrigerator, which is kind of a classic Alzheimer's, right? Put your car keys in the freezer has been one of the things we've always talked about, where it's not just memory loss. It's doing things that are like odd. You would never put your car keys in the freezer. You might lose them. A lot of us do lose our car keys, right? But you wouldn't put them in the freezer. So anyway, so this is starting to happen to him. And I'm thinking to myself, how is he gonna play this out? I mean, he's remember who he's supposed to be killing and what equipment he's supposed to use and who he is, and don't get his lives mixed up, because the mob doesn't know anything about the wife and the daughter. Nothing. They think he's just this hermit that lives alone in New York in this really fancy apartment and doesn't go out and doesn't really do anything. He's just kind of this, hitman guy. I like it. I love it. And it's really well done. And I will be interested in seeing how they play this out because, of course, as a gerontologist, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, so both Patrick Dempsey and the brother seem under 60, which would mean that the brother at least has been diagnosed with early onset. We know that early onset can be familial, so they're getting that right. It's a very low percentage, 5%, but it can be familial, so it could be that both brothers would have it. And so we'll see how this continues to play out. But so far, they're doing a pretty good job. And because I'm watching for all the little nuances, are they, displaying the disease correctly and the risks or the red flags and all those kinds of things. So anyway, you may want to check it out. I like it. I think it's really well done, and it's not super gory. By the way, I'm not a gory person. I don't like horror films or anything. So even though he's a hitman, you don't see it. It's nowhere near like The Sopranos. Okay, no, not even close. And then what we're going to do, and you'll see it on the screen here. I also compiled for you my favorite list of movies. Many of them were Oscar contenders. that have to deal, have a topic of Alzheimer's. So everything from, as I mentioned, Still Alice to Away from Her, to What They Had. I don't have it in front of me. Anyway, you can see it on the screen there. Really great movies. If you're interested, in just watching some of these stories and how they affect families and, all that kind of stuff, these are really great movies to check out. So now moving on in our pop culture segment, we've had several celebrities die even since the beginning of this year. I mean, last year was just like a blow after blow after blow, and maybe it's because I'm older, so I'm starting to see some of these actors and actresses who are just slightly older than me. They're all kind of going, but Diane Keaton and Michael Madsen and Robert Redford, and of course the tragedy that we've talked about on this newscast of Rob Reiner. Anyway, there just seemed to be like blow after blow. But even since the beginning of the year, we've had a handful of celebrities die, and in fact, four just in the last month. And all of them, quite frankly, in my opinion, too young to go. And I wanted to use it as a conversation piece and a conversation kickstarter on what we really need to pay attention to with our bodies. So often, I think, we live in a stressed out world, information and choice overload. And, of course, we're going to have headaches and backaches and, digestive problems and all that kind of stuff because we're just overstressed. But we want to be really careful about not ignoring some of the warning signs. And also something that I wanted to share with you about one of the actors at the end. So let's start with, first of all, Eric Dane. Many of you know him from Grey's Anatomy on television and also Euphoria. And he was in one of my favorite movies, just a cute little movie called Valentine's Day. He played a football player in that, which was cute. But he just recently died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. This is a fatal neurodegenerative disease. There is no cure. The average is about, once diagnosed, you can live for maybe between 2 and 5 years. Now, some people like Stephen Hawking, who also had this disease, was diagnosed very early in his life. And as we know, lived, I think, well into his 60s, I think. So many, many decades you live with the disease. So everybody is different, and there are, different types of the disease, some serious, some not. A very dear colleague of mine, her husband, who I knew, I worked with him way, way back when I worked in technology, and I worked for the consumer technology giant Canon. We both worked there. She and I met later in life, actually, and didn't even know the connection, but her husband had ALS, and it's a very tough role for caregivers. There are silver linings. So Eric Dane was only 53, and he was only diagnosed about a year ago, so he went pretty fast. And so I just wanted to, it's gradual, comes on gradually. It's where you have painless muscle weakness. So there's no pain, but your muscles are all of a sudden not doing what they're supposed to do, and you're maybe tripping or, dragging a foot or something. You're twitching, you're having cramps, a lot of cramps. Now, you can get cramps from dehydration too. So again, you just want to understand a little bit more about some of these things. Typically starts in a limb, like a hand, leg, or arm, or even the throat, and leads to trouble with walking, dropping objects, slurred speech, or difficulty swallowing. Now, slurred speech, difficulty swallowing could be other things too, like a stroke. So again, some of these things mask themselves maybe as something else, but anytime you have a problem like that, you want to get it checked out. And we know that more men are diagnosed with ALS, particularly after the age of 55, and more military vets have a higher risk. So that's the Eric Dane story. The second one, which was, I know, shocking for a lot of people, although he had been out there advocating for early detection for screenings for cancer, but James Vanderbeek, who just recently died of stage 3 colorectal cancer at age 48. Oh, my goodness. He was, of course, on TV's Dawson Creek and Friday Night Lights, and he was also a Broadway star, did a lot of musicals on Broadway. But this is a tough one because he said, and he was a healthy guy, let me tell you, never overweight, always looked in good health, good shape. He played in Friday Night Lights, which was a football TV show, and he was one of the football players. But He noticed subtle bowel movement changes, and he thought it was because he was drinking too much coffee. He's like, I'm getting to that age. I can't drink as many cups of coffee a day. And that's a typical, right? Many of us do that. We're thinking, got to give up, the French fries or got to give up the Cokes or whatever it is once you start getting into your 40s and 50s and things just don't seem to be moving or feeling right in the gut. But he went and got a colonoscopy, so good on him. But unfortunately, by that time, it had become stage 3. And he really didn't have a lot of warning signs. And unfortunately for him, he didn't make a lot of money from his acting because his contract when he was kind of more like a kid at Dawson's Creek, it became such a huge hit and still is on streaming, right? Unfortunately, his contract was not done very well. He got no residuals from that, which is really, really sad. So his family struggled through his battling this disease with all the medical bills and everything that they're now left with, including the loss of a husband and father. I think he had 5 or 6 children with his wife. So very, very sad there. The next one, Catherine O'Hara. Okay, everybody knows her as the mom from Home Alone. Also, she was in some of my favorite movies with Christopher Guest, Best of Show. And then more recently, she was in Schitt's Creek, which I still haven't watched. I have to stream that, but I have so many friends who say it's just like hilarious. You're just going to love it. But she died at 71, again, way too young. And she died of what we call PE, pulmonary embolism. Now, what this is basically a blood clot in your lung that has burst. And then what it does is it causes things like maybe cardiac arrest or stroke or whatever. Now, we get it often from deep vein thrombosis, which is pain, swelling, warmth, or redness in your legs, particularly your calf area. And a lot of people get this if they're on road trips and they're sitting in the car for many, many hours, or people who are on planes, particularly if you have other chronic illness that maybe you're battling, or you have high blood pressure, so you need to wear like compression socks and things because you can really cause some problems, particularly on long flights if you don't get up in the middle of the flight and kind of walk up and down the aisle there. But yeah, the large clots obstruct your pulmonary arteries and cause a sudden, what we call cardiovascular collapse. So the smaller clots can also block smaller vessels and can impair breathing and strain the heart. So you don't have the heart attack and die or the stroke and die, but you have pain, and it's kind of like a precursor. It's like you better get in there now and get some help because it's just going to get worse and eventually it will burst, and you're gonna have what unfortunately Catherine O'Hara experienced. It's more typical with people over 60, people who have had recent surgery. So it can be a complication from surgery, and people who've been immobilized for a long period of time. So maybe they've been in rehab and been more bedridden and not as mobile. Interesting enough, pregnancy, particularly if you've had problems with blood clots in your life, pregnancy can be a risk factor. And then if you're battling cancer or obesity or AFib or just any kind of inherited blood type disorder. Now, it did come out that even though this is what caused her death, Catherine was battling rectal cancer. So that was a comorbidity and created additional complications for her that I'm sure ultimately led to her death. And what you need to be aware of is, sudden shortness of breath. So not like after you've walked quickly up a couple flights of stairs or, kind of done a swift walk and your shortness of breath. No, this is like comes on suddenly and not based on any kind of aerobic kind of activity that you've done. Chest pain that worsens when you do deep breathing. So pay attention to that. And then any kind of unexplained heart rate. So either lower or particularly higher, rapid, it could be a PE. So some people also cough up blood and experience lightheadedness or fainting. So just some things to be aware of there. And she was such a gift, a comedic gift to all of us. Thankfully, we have these wonderful shows and films that she's been in we can go back and watch, which is kind of one of the nice things with some of these celebs. And then finally, we come to Keith Carradine, who just died last week. while I'm recording this. He was 71 as well, too young. He was in Revenge of the Nerds. And for many of you who watched the Lizzie McGuire show on Disney TV, he was the dad of Lizzie McGuire in that. Now, he had suffered from bipolar disorder most of his adult life for decades. And unfortunately, he did take his own life. So he did commit suicide. For anybody out there who knows somebody who has suicidal ideation or thoughts, 988 is the lifeline. That's the number you call, just like 911 if we have an emergency, 988 if you're having any kind of those thoughts, you want to help a loved one. I will say that one of the things that we see in gerontology is that more older men tend to commit suicide than women. And it's based on sometimes depression over health issues or loneliness and isolation, or in Keith's situation, obviously it was related to his mental illness. And that's something that, again, we all have to be aware of. We can be happy maybe that the person living with mental illness has been able to navigate and maybe stay on track with medications and have somewhat of a normal life. But as they age, things get much more difficult, and we have to pay attention to that. So that is it for our pop culture. And I want to just appreciate, again, all of you listening to our newscast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notifications of the next newscast, and also podcasts and self-care in 7 minutes videos and everything else that we do on that YouTube channel. And again, everybody, you can take care and stay well. That's a wrap for Caregiving Club Newscast this week. We hope you enjoyed these news segments. You can email us at info@caregivingclub.com to let us know a news story we should cover, or leave us a comment on our YouTube page. And don't forget to subscribe to our Caregiving Club YouTube channel to get all the caregiving news every other week, as well as our other content, our Me Time Monday Self-Care in 7 Minutes weekly videos, and our Caregiving Club On Air podcasts, which are available on our Caregiving Club YouTube channel, as well as Apple, Amazon, Spotify, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, and other podcast listening channels. Find out more about Sherri and Caregiving Club at caregivingclub.com. Take care and stay well.